if you had to start all over in the world of music production and, you know, your audio services related career, what would you do if you had to start over?
All right. So I think we both agree that we're starting off with with no experience, but also like maybe we have a microphone interface and a laptop. Like let's just say we're starting there, right?
Let's set the stage with
like,
that.
Yeah, because the first thing I would do is I would get gear, right? Like gear.
Get the interface. Yeah, it's like I framed it like you're in it on a desert island.
Yeah,
you don't have any of your gear. What would you do?
I'd probably find
some
food first.
Yeah. Then
Start
I'd get some sticks and, you know, make like an animal skin drum and just like make some island beats.
Yeah,
the coconut percussion, you know.
It's like playing spoons with the coconuts. Yeah, let's assume we're not starting there. Let's assume we're starting where we have a microphone, an interface, a laptop, and we're able to see our future self comes back and says, "Hey, these are 3 things. What would we tell ourselves?"
Yeah, you got the basics.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say this one is in a particular order, and I think this should be the number 1. I thought about saving it for the end of the episode, but most people are not gonna make it to the end of the episode, so I'm just gonna say this right now: get a mentor. Find somebody who's doing what you like to do and try to learn from them. Like, I don't care if you have to go get their coffee. I don't care if you have to whatever you got to do. If you're wrapping cables or something, find somebody who's doing this, because you will learn things just by association. You can't avoid that. If you're just it's fun. It's so funny. My dad is a mechanic works on cars, and I know things just by association. My dad talked about it all the time. He was there all the time. Sometimes he'd ask for my help and do little things. And now, when somebody's talking to me at work and they're like, I don't understand what's going on with my car. I'm like, let's go for a ride. And I'm like, oh, this is exactly what's going on. Yeah, this is a tire, tie rod. This is, your tire's cupped or something like that. It's all these things that I just know just because I was around it and I experienced it. Those are shortcuts that it's so hard to teach. Because if somebody was and sat me down and was like, teach me everything you know about cars, I don't know. I don't even think I know a lot about cars, but just by association, I do. And so the best way to do it is just to get around a mentor. And if you can't do that, find somebody online. There's the internet's in a crazy place right now where you can learn so much. Just find somebody you like on YouTube and just ask if they're willing to get on calls with you. Ask if they have anything at all that you can learn from. You will learn so much more by finding somebody who's done what you want to do, and you just talk to them. And by association, you will learn things. I think that, if at least for me, is the most important thing that I would tell myself if I was going back in time and saying, hey, these are 3 things you needed to do.
Man, that was one on my list too. I totally agree. It was
the universal principles.
Yeah, mine said get a. I made a note, and it was get a mentor or find a community where you can learn or something along those lines.
Yep.
Get educated. And for me, I'm very grateful to have had a couple of mentors in my life as well.
As am I.
But an example of it for me was also just I did go to audio school for 2 years to study, and that just fast tracked a lot of things for me. It's absolutely not necessary to go to audio school. That was my version of learning production and learning a lot of things, but any version of that, going through a course or just learning from someone who does it as a career. Some of the professors I had had at one point been full-time producers and then moved into teaching and stuff like that. So it's okay, these people know what they're doing. For example, now we both work in music. I do mixing. That's what I do. And so now we're moving into teaching. So if you're here at this podcast, this is a great place to be. So you're already starting to check this box by being here. So it's get a mentor, get a community, and you can learn so much and just speed all things up. It's imagine if you wanted to get good at mixing, for example, and you literally knew absolutely nothing, and you were just given a compressor. And you couldn't read anything about it. You couldn't talk to anyone about it. There was no education about it. All you could do was trial and error, mess with the compressor. Eventually, you'd get it and you'd figure it out and you'd understand how it works. But how much faster would it go, assuming you know nothing about compressors, that someone came, let's say you have an 1176 compressor. You have an expert next to you saying, okay, this is the attack. Here's what it does. Watch. Here's the release. Here's what it does. Watch. Here's the input. We're hitting an internal threshold. Here's what the threshold is. Here's what the ratio is. And just explains it to you. Then it wouldn't take you like a year or two of just like testing out the compressor with having no idea what it's doing, which like in my earliest days of messing with GarageBand, I remember like not even opening up a compressor on the track because I was just afraid of what it did. But then once I got educated, it's like, here's what a compressor does. Fast tracked all of that for me because like I probably still would have stayed away from compressors of just being scared. So like get educated, whether it's a mentor, like a community, or subscribing to this channel, for example. Get educated. So mine totally aligns with yours. That was on my list too, for sure.
That's amazing. I do want to kind of piggyback off that real quick because like this can be like super disappointing. Like just because I understand where some people are coming from. Because dude, I live in a town with like 1,500 people max. Like I think we talked about, what was it, like 2,000 people is like my town's population. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
It's very small. And I remember like people saying, you gotta find mentors, and I was like, I am like screwed, right? So like I ended up finding somebody who now like they do this in Nashville now, and they lived about like 45 minutes from me. And so like I drove to their like home studio like once, twice a week and learn from them. Now if you are somebody who's in a position like I am and you have no idea where you can go, no idea where you can learn, don't worry, because the internet has opened up so many possibilities. Like they used to say, and it's still true, like you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around with. I like to take this another step further, and I like to say that you are the sum of the 5 people whose content you consume. So, like, if you're listening to this podcast and you're listening to, like, 4 other people who are teaching the same stuff, you will become more like us in that aspect because you're learning from us and you're learning the things that we do. And you just have to kind of envelop yourself and surround yourself with that content. One of the best things I ever did, and it was actually by accident, when I started my YouTube channel, I created a new YouTube account, the whole 9 yards, right? And I was starting to get recommended content that had nothing to do with what I originally was getting recommended, because it was a brand new channel, and my interests had shifted. And so now I was getting recommended content that was significantly different than what it used to be because my interests had shifted. And then I started to become more like the 5 people I started to really follow. It was like Tony Robbins, for example, where I was like, what is this mindset stuff? This is crazy. Like that was just wild to me to see that kind of stuff come about. And I thought it was amazing. And so one of the best things I think anybody could do is just go through their list and just start unfollowing people just to clear out the noise. Find like 5 people you really, really like to listen to, and then surround yourself with their content and with the content. You don't have to have a physical in-person mentor. That's not necessary. If you could find one, by all means, but it's not necessary. I think one of the best things that you can do is you can find somebody that is online if you are living in a spot like, for example, where I'm at. It's really hard to find people in that aspect. So yeah, I want to encourage people, not discourage them. You have an advantage, and that is the internet. If you're listening to this podcast, you have access to the internet. You have access to the resources that you need.
There are absolutely no excuses. Like literally, and I have an example of this, like one of my very close mentors, who is a specific person that mentored me directly. At the time, I had lived in the same city as him. And we literally lived 5 minutes from each other, but we were both like very, very busy kind of people, and we never had a chance to actually like get together. So despite living 5 minutes away, it didn't matter. Like I visited him at his studio maybe like 4 times ever.
Oh, wow.
And literally I learned so much about him, just about the music industry and about career momentum and like literally building my career. Like I owe a lot of, I always like tell him like I wouldn't be where I'm at without what I've learned from you. And all of it happened mostly from like long phone conversations or him sending me podcasts, like literally like listen to this, like next part, and then he'd send me an audiobook and be like, this is the next part of your training or something. So like it didn't I was 5 minutes away from him, but we still found it more effective just to build a strong mentorship relationship just using the internet, because that's how we made it work with both of our schedules and our time, because we were so busy. So like there's no excuse. It doesn't matter if you live in a city of like 1,000 people. It doesn't matter if you live in a large city like I've lived in a couple different large cities now, and that was a large city. We were a few minutes from each other, and still the internet was the best possible thing. So if you're doing this from Antarctica, it's completely possible, because I built my entire career based off mentorships like that, for example. Like it's totally doable. But with all this said, like I think that's a really strong point, and I think we should maybe jump into number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a reach out strategy. I think we should make that a different podcast. If you're interested in making that, or in listening to that podcast episode and you want us to make it, let us know in the comments about ways to reach out to mentors.
Yeah.
So that
that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. That's an episode for itself.
Oh, I could go on that podcast. I know you could too.
Oh yeah, dude, I know, because I have done the stupid things and I've done the smart things, and I found that the smart things work better. And so yeah, if you want to know what the smart things are, and we'll make an entire episode dedicated to that. If you're interested, we're not going to make it though if you don't want it. Just let us know in the comments if you're interested.
Awesome. All right, Andrew, give me your number 2.
All right,
Hopefully
number 2.
I didn't copy you again, but we'll find out.
We'll find out. Maybe it's another universal principle that's for us too. Better sounds. If I could go back and say, after the mentor, find better sounds, get a better source sound. That means getting just a decent microphone and a quiet room. I mean, for the love of all things holy, get yourself in a quiet room so that way you can actually get a great sounding vocal recording. If you can't, get some moving blankets, anything, get better source sounds. But above that though is get better drum samples, get better samples in general. If you are especially working with a lot of people like I do, where we use a lot of E-kits and electric kits, get really good drum samples and really good contact libraries and a lot of things like that will just take it to the next level. Sounds are just infinitely better than plugins, in my opinion. Unless you can get great recordings and you have access to great instruments, just get really good virtual instruments and samples and sounds. That will take you so much farther than any mixing trick ever.
Oh man, that's a really good one. I love that, and I didn't copy you on it, but I completely agree, and it absolutely belongs on this list. And probably just to play devil's advocate here, I'm guessing some people would be like, oh, but contact libraries are so expensive, and Serum and everything, it's expensive. One thing I would say to that is you can literally get a subscription to Splice, which you've probably heard of Splice. It's tons of samples for anything you want. You can literally get a subscription for $10 a month and download hundreds of individual samples. So what you can do is subscribe for a couple months. So it's $20 and download all of the best sounding kicks that you can find, all of the best sounding snares that you could find, and build out your own little sample library of those things. And then if budget's a problem, you can unsubscribe or just find a ton of sounds. I have so many unused Splice credits just sitting there, and I can just go whenever and just grab a ton of sounds. But I also, over time I've invested in I have Contact, and I've invested in all the drum packs and stuff like that. But if you just need to start somewhere, you can literally build commercial ready songs just using just high quality drum samples, which you can find on Splice for literally it's I don't know what it is US, but it's something like $10 a month. Just start building your own library, even on a small budget. You can do that, and it shouldn't hold you back. So that's just such a great point. There's no excuse now for not using good sounds. You know what I mean?
And for anybody wondering, the Oliver packs on Splice, Splice overall, I think is a bit overrated because there's just there's so much overwhelm. But knowing what the right packs to get, the Travis Barker kicks and snares, stuff like that were really, really good. Those were really good. And then the Oliver packs on Splice, they are great, man. I can't guarantee this, but I'm 99% positive that they use some of the Oliver's sounds on The Weeknd's new album. Almost guarantee it.
Yeah.
Either that or they use the same drum machines and stuff like that. But nevertheless, those are the sounds that I personally really, really like, at least for the genres of music that I work on.
They sound so good. And for sound design, anything like that, just look up Cashmere.
Those are great ones too.
Just awesome. Get yourself some good sounds, and you're going to just blow yourself away with what's possible.
Awesome. What's your number 2?
So my one of mine was start sooner. So this is what I would do at the beginning. If I had to go back to the beginning and I didn't give myself this little list of advice, I would sit there and wait how many years? Like I could like many years. Like since I got serious, I waited 1, 2, 3, 3.5 years to actually launch my online services of mixing and start my mixing career. Like I was doing all sorts of like little things, but I never just got serious and just said, "Hey, I'm offering this as a service." And at the beginning, like when I did it, I didn't know that much more than I knew a year before I started doing it, you know? Like it wouldn't have mattered if I started when I did or if I started a year sooner. It was like I literally for example, like I made a Fiverr profile. That was like my earliest days of offering mixing online. I found a resource, you know, now you can find me in all sorts of areas and my website and things. And I offer mixing like that, but I literally could have made that profile a year earlier and had the exact same experiences, you know, like,
Yep.
I knew what I knew already then, and I waited and I waited and I waited. And then I finally made a thing. So like, if I could have just started sooner, and a lot of the experience a lot of my knowledge about mixing, for example, came from trial and error, and came from pushing through projects and like just taking on projects and figuring it out as I went, and just making sure no matter how I got there, even if it was a bumpy road to figure out how to do it, I would get a good result at the end by just like forcing myself to figure it out. And I could have forced myself to figure it all out a year sooner, 2 years sooner. Like don't wait. So I would go back and tell myself at the beginning, okay, you're gonna set this up today, and you're gonna just start working today. You know,
Yep.
If you're not confident yet, you don't have to charge premium mixing prices, but put your services out there, charge something, and start helping people who align with you on that early beginning budget, and need some work from someone who's willing to try their best, So that's what I would say, start sooner.
I think that's amazing. It reminds me of this quote that Harvard actually did a study, I think it was Harvard, that it takes 20 hours of focused work to get proficient at anything, like decent. Like you're not going to be like the world's greatest, but like if you take 20 hours and just dedicate 20 hours into whatever you want to do, you will get proficient at it. Like better than most. Just take 20 hours, you'll learn how to play guitar well and better than most. And the thing is, if it takes 20 hours to get proficient at any skill, and most people wait years to start the first minute.
To start the first minute of the first hour. It's
Yep.
like just putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Like start now. Like if there's something you want to do, if it's like, hey, I want to learn how to master music, like just start. Just start. Like
Just start.
if it's like, I want to put out a YouTube video, like just put out the video. Like do it now. Like don't wait, because just like Andrew said, it's like most people wait like years to start the first minute, but you only just have to get those hours in as soon as possible, and then you can move forward.
Exactly. It's like the perfect
true.
time fallacy, where everybody thinks like, oh, if I just like I just need to make sure that I have all the information and wait for the perfect time. The problem is like you never have all the perfect information, because you don't know what you don't know. And the only way for those unknown unknowns to reveal themselves to you is to just start doing. Once you start doing things, then you start to realize, oh, I have this issue and I have this issue and I have this problem. Like I learned how to play guitar, played in a band, and then realized that I had an issue with recording, and then I just dove headfirst into learning how to record myself and mix. And I remember like in the early years, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just really interested in just getting myself heard, so that way other people could listen to my music. That was all I really cared about. And then I started understanding the unknown unknowns. The like what I didn't even know existed was a DAW. Like I I remember Googling like how to record my own music, and like I'm getting ads for like Tascam. Remember the old Tascam recorders that had the CD burner built in on the side?
Oh man!
Oh my word!
That was my dream to have that one. I couldn't afford that one at the time, so I just
Neither
got
could
the
I.
one. I got the one with the compact flash card in it.
Yes.
So that I could like
Yeah.
I could like move the tracks over to my computer with that, and then I have to burn the CD from my computer.
Yep, and then I went to I went to the church that we went to who had they had a CD burner because they would record all of the like all of last week's sermons, and then they would make a ton of CD copies. And so, like, throughout
Just
the week,
use the burner.
Yeah, I would just use the burner. So, like, throughout the week when they weren't using it, I would go in and use the burner and make a bunch of copies of the CDs. And I didn't even know what mixing was, man. I was just putting all the tracks together and pressing record. And then it was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. You know, and then I just put out the, you know, I was like, why is this not sounding good? It started, like, you just don't know what you don't know until you start doing. And I would 1000% go back and tell myself what you're saying is, like, just start sooner. If you start sooner, those things reveal themselves so much quicker. So much quicker.
Oh, awesome, man.
It's
Well,
amazing.
I mean, I think I know we said we're biased, but I think so far like these are pretty universally helpful techniques.
I would agree.
You know, let's see how number 3 lines up with these two. What would be your third and final thing that you tell
Yeah.
yourself? Obviously, the list goes on. But
Oh, yeah, the list continues on.
Yeah.
I really had to think about this one, and then once I thought about it, once I remembered this one lesson, I was like, yeah, no, absolutely, this would probably be like the most, if nothing else, if I couldn't get a mentor and I couldn't get better sounds, I would follow the rule of 100. This is what I would do. I would get just get 100 XYZ done. Get 100 mixes done. Write 100 songs. Produce 100 songs. Like, just mess around with 100 different tracks. Just do 100 of something. And then when I started working with artists, like this is a lesson I didn't learn until I started trying to work with artists, where I would I heard somebody say just do the rule of 100, and I can't remember who it was, but nevertheless they said, like, just if you just send 100 DMs a day, somebody eventually will respond to you. And I was like, cool. So, like, on Instagram, I was sending 100 DMs a day until finally somebody would say, yeah, I'll work with you. And dude, it was the most generic copy and paste thing I had ever done. It was the worst. Like, I feel bad for anybody that if you're listening to this and you got one of those messages, I am sorry. but it worked though. Like, after a few hundred, it started to work. People started to reach out, and they're like, hey, you know, like, yeah, I'm interested. Like, let me listen to your portfolio, dude. That's how I just didn't even know, like, the unknown unknowns again. I wasn't even sending a link to my portfolio. I was like, hey, I'm a producer. I would love to produce your music. Will you work with me? Like, that was the most generic kind of message. But and it's the same thing. Like, just produce 100 songs, mix 100 songs, get that out of the way. Because, like, and one thing, I was working with one of my students on this, and he's like, hey, I've been mixing this song for the last 3 years, and I just can't seem to get it right. And literally 3 years. And I told him, I said, dude, you need to let it go and move on. There's a time and a place to dive in head first and to spend a lot of time working on something. Like, but you don't know what to do until you've gotten 100 songs done, right?
Yeah.
You know, he had like maybe 4 different songs recorded and released. I'm like, you are not at a place yet where you can spend 3 years. He's like, well, but my favorite songs, my favorite albums, they take 2-3 years to drop. And I'm like, you don't see the mountain of songs that never got released. You don't see that.
Yeah.
You don't see the pile of the half-written songs, the finished songs, the demos, the 72 mixes, all this other stuff that never made it to the album. You only see the album in the 2 years it took to get there. There's all of this stuff that they had to climb across to get there. So just get 100 done. Get 100 mixes done. Write 100 songs. Produce 100 different songs. Reach out to 100 different people if you want to start working with them. Do 100 of whatever it is that you want to do and whatever it is you want to get good at. And I promise you, if you do 100, you will have absolute clarity and focus on what actually matters, but only after you've done the 100. I did the same thing with my YouTube channel. I just did not look at the analytics. I didn't care. I was like, I don't care if anybody sees this. I don't want to care about the views. I don't want to care about anything. Like, I just need to get 100 videos out there, and if somebody resonates with some of my tutorials online, and they're like, thank you so much for making this, then I won. That's all that mattered. I just need to get 100 videos out, and that was one of the best things I ever did. So, yeah, I would tell my past self, and this is a long-winded, I would tell my past self, get 100 done.
Oh, that's such a good one. That is amazing. It's like the people who the artists who worked on those albums, it's like they've written their first 100 songs before this, and the first 100 were not that good. Like that's why things are good, because they put in that first 100. Things are not good because they spent all that time that they would have put on the first 100 things in the first task of those 100.
Yep.
Like if there's all this, if you have this much time, how do I go to the camera? This much time, and you could spend that all doing this 100 different things over and over and over, or just spend it on the same one thing and the same one song, the same one thing, and just obsessing over like the same mix over and over and over again. Like you just can't make progress that way, because you don't encounter, like every song will teach you something new. So if you're just stuck in the same little world of the same little song forever, you're not going to get those new experiences, because you're just trying to EQ the same guitar track 100 times. Whereas if you EQ'd 100 different guitars, you'd have faced all sorts of different dilemmas and have problem solving opportunities and got those reps in.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just such a no-brainer. That's such a good one, man. That is like, that
a lot
on
of
its
people
own can be a whole clip.
Yeah, I agree. This is a great episode. I feel like people underestimate the volume it takes. Like I've been doing this for 10 years. Like over 10 years I've been doing this. And that's like just producing music and mixing. Like people underestimate the volume it takes to get there. And I don't think it takes 10 years. I say this all the time. I don't think it takes 10 years. I just think it takes the 10 years of focused effort that I put in probably was 3. Like I had 3 years of real focused effort and attention dedicated to this. Like a lot of it was like I didn't know what I was doing and I was chasing my tail and running around in circles. I had no idea what I was doing. So I really think like the 10 years could be down in even a year. If you're like somebody who's super focused and super driven, you could do what I'm doing in like a year if you just know what to do. And this is why we like going to these 3 things. So what is your third?
It's 100% possible.
Yep.
My third is this was something extremely hard for me, because for the longest time I was trying to do everything and say yes to everything and be everything for everyone in my career. Like I wanted to, go through the entire, I wanted to be a film composer and a music producer and an audio engineer and a songwriter and a folk artist and a rock artist and and a content creator and a performance coach and just like a tutor. I was like, and I wanted to be a tutor, and I was promoting local concerts, and I was doing live sound, and I was like creating like networking events for the music scene. So I was literally doing like 20 different things and trying to build a career out of that. And I could never get the ball rolling in any one direction, because I was constantly, as soon as I would get far enough down one road, I'd be pulled like a magnet back to the starting point and going down the other one. And so I'd keep like, I wish I could draw it out, but I'd keep like, if I was in the center of the circle with all these spokes, I could never get down to the edge of the wheel where the success is, because I'm always like slightly in this one, slightly in this one, slightly in this one. And literally what I would go back and tell myself is like, look, it's great to want to do all these things, and saying yes to everything is good for a little bit of time while you find out what you like. But if you can just niche down sooner and find that thing that you can get good at, you're going to be successful, And so like for me, my example of this is like, what is it now? A little over 3 years ago, deciding to go into mixing full time, and then making that transition, and then just like getting really, really good at it. And like I pair music production also with mixing. Like I still take on select artists to do music production for, but I niche down into like studio recordings and getting really good at this one thing. I don't I don't do live sound anymore in the capacity I did. I don't do creating networking events and organizing like registration lists for like local events. And so like I chose one thing, and if I had spread my attention across everything else, I never would have been able to turn this into like a full-time gig, for example. I was so pulled in so many different directions. And I think the thing to realize is like, look, the reason we're afraid to pick a direction is because we don't want to be stuck in something for our whole lives. Like, let's say you're afraid to go into only sound design. Oh, and that's another thing I want to be, a sound designer. And I literally did like sound design jobs too. Just picking one, like you're afraid to go into like, let's say all sound design because part of your heart like also loves music, and you don't want to go too far that way because then you fear like you'll lose this other part of yourself. But the thing is, like, it just because you go down this path now, just because I went down mixing now, doesn't mean I'm in mixing forever. Like, another thing I want to do is like help other people and teach other people. Like, I went down this mixing path like 4 years, in terms of doing it all day, every day, 24/7. So probably, that's over 10 years of like doing it as hobby time, for example, like doing it constantly. Like I've got the experience that I want, and now I'm like pivoting to also teaching, and that's okay. Like I'm not stuck, but you can't actually find success in any one thing if you don't choose. So if it's being an artist, go all in on being an artist. If it's being a producer, go all in on being a producer. And get really good at that thing. And of course, keep those like other parts of you alive. And you can do it in your spare time and stuff. But you're not going to be, it's nearly impossible to be successful in this if you want to do it like seriously, if you don't pick a direction. So like Andrew, for example, like you really liked getting into recording. And of course, like you love performing and you do it as like a hobby and a thing on the side. Like I know you perform and play guitar live and stuff like that. But like you decided, I'm going to get into recording and production. And you were able to spend that time and like master that and get really good at it. But if you were also trying to do a million other things, like become, a Spotify recording artist yourself and like push that brand, like you'd be pulled in so many different directions and you'd only get halfway on each of them. So I would go back in time and I would tell myself, hey, little buddy, look, I know you want to do all this stuff. And it's awesome that you're doing it. What are you resonating with right now? What do you like? Like, are there any of these that, like, which ones are you seeing results in for yourself? Which ones are you not seeing results in for yourself? Like, make a list and drop those other things.
Yep.
Like, literally just drop it,
I 1000% agree with you on that one.
So that's what I would go. I think that's a really valuable thing. And I think you should say yes to a lot of opportunities and stuff like that. But also at some point, when you want to take it serious, you're going to have to decide and go down a route. At least like narrow down from 20 things to like a couple. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that worked really well for me. So
I agree. I think there's two.
Third.
Yeah. There's two things that I think that kind of like bounce off the back of that I just really like is like the rocket analogy. You spend 90% of a rocket's fuel just leaving the Earth's atmosphere. But once it hits orbit, you travel around the Earth at over 1,000 miles an hour and use zero fuel. What if the rocket was like, well, if we could go straight up, but we could go over here real quick, and maybe we'll come back over here, and then try to come back over here. You never make it past
out of the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's called atmospheric velocity or something like that. I can't remember. Nevertheless, I'm sure somebody knows. But it's that velocity, that escape velocity is what it is. You have to reach escape velocity, and you never get that without just honing in on it. And it's funny because I think our number threes actually align, where I said find what you like and do 100 of it, and you're like pick one and go all in. And so I think they actually are very similar in that case. I just found I think it's funny because like that answer is actually almost identical. It's just we found one that works best for our personalities. You're the kind of person that's like, all right, I'm just going to go all in on this. I'm going to focus. I'm the kind of person that's like, I need numbers. Like, okay, so how long do I need to do this for? What am I doing? And it's, okay, 100. Now let's go, right? So I think it's so funny because that's the same thing It's just we have found a way to track it for ourselves. Where you're like, I want to focus in on this. I want to do all this, and I'm like, I'm just gonna get 100 of these done and really see it through.
Yeah,
and,
man.
Yeah.
It's like launch one big rocket. Don't try and launch like, you know how you could buy as a kid, like you could buy from the toy store, like those rockets.
Yes.
Like those are cool. And you could buy for the same money to launch a large rocket, you could buy 1 million small rockets, and it would be cool. But even if you launch all 1,000,000 of the small rockets, 0 of them are going to leave the atmosphere. But the one big rocket where you put all you put all the chips on it, that one's going to get out. And once it gets out, it will cruise. And once it cruises, you can explore other things, you know?
Yep.
You can look at one of those mini rockets and say, do I want to upgrade one of those now to be another big rocket? And do I want to launch a satellite next to that big rocket? But so like, do not let the fear of being stuck forever, like hold you back from picking one, but you do have to pick one.
Yes.
And just cut out the distractions, you know?
Yep. I love the word decide, which like in the root word decado, something like that, where you decide, you cut off. Decide literally means cut off. You are cutting off all other opportunities. It's not just like, it's one thing to say you're focusing on something. It's another thing to say, I am not giving myself any other option but to work on this. Like when I decided that I was going to start producing music and start taking this seriously. I've been doing it for a long time. When I decided, I was like, I'm going to start doing this for money and want to take it seriously. That was how I wanted to take it seriously, was doing this for money. I deleted all the games off my PC. Because I was like, I cannot play video games.
Burn the boats.
Burn the
right?
boats. I am deleting Doom Eternal off of my PC, and because I just knew, like, if I came home and I was like, I just don't feel like it, you know, I just want to play a game to relax and settle down. It's like, no, that's not what I'm doing. I am deciding to continue to work on this, so therefore I'm cutting off all other options, and this is what I'm doing. It's
man.
yeah, it's the same thing. If you want to get to the gym, you decide that you're going to go to the gym, and on your way home, you pull into the parking lot without even thinking of it. You already have your gym bag packed from the night before. You just do it without thinking about it, and you leave yourself no other option. You just cut off all other options and just go all in on that one thing. So, yeah, I think, dude, great number 3. I think you nailed that one, bro.
Well, I think we totally agree, and I think a cool way to maybe end this episode is just to piggyback off of you. There's this story about, you guys can research it and tell me how wrong I am, but I think like a Spanish general, for example, way back in the day, and they were going to take over this city, right? And they arrive at the city on the coast via boat. And the soldiers, have come into shore, and the only option is like forward, or, you could retreat to the boats. But if the boats are there, you're not going to fight your hardest, because you may be able, if you're getting a little bit timid and a little bit afraid of the fight, everyone can run back to the boats. So the soldiers got to the shore, and the general said, okay, burn the boats. And they burned the boats, lit them on fire, like sank them. The only option was to charge full speed ahead with everything you got, because there is no retreat.
There's no option.
There's no option for retreat. And guess what happened? They took the city. So that's sad for the people in the city, but if you want to...
I was like, so inspiring, and then you're like, sad for the people in the city. I was like, I forgot about that part.
But these are not people in the city. These are like the demons of your life holding you back. Like, you need to burn the boats.